I'm Rob.
And I'm Nate.
And welcome back to Rob and Nate Record a Podcast with some possible background interjections from Scout, who was just neutered yesterday, so he's keeping us company on the couch.
I couldn't come up with it asked for a joke, but
Yeah.
I just don't have one.
This is an episode let me rephrase that. This is a movie I have been waiting to discuss with Nate for well in excess of 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
We are discussing the 2019 film Knives Out with a great and wonderful cast, which we will get into. But Nate, first impressions?
Well, we should probably talk about the implied joke there, or the reference there about waiting so long to watch this movie. I've heard good things about this movie. I came into it expecting to like it, and I wanted to see it theatrically. But sometimes, if you don't see something in the first 4 to 6 weeks that it's in the first run theater, you're like, it's going to be in the dollar theater. And I kept pushing it off, and it kept being the number 2 selection for a week.
And I kept telling Nate to make it his number 1 selection and to just go see it in the first run theater, not to wait for the dollar theater.
Because in pre-COVID times, I saw a movie about a movie a week in theater.
Yeah.
And so I had plenty of opportunity to see this. I wanted to see it, but I don't know. There was something about me that was just a little reticent, was always find something to watch over it.
And to be clear, Nate says this movie was always his second choice. When I saw this movie, it was like my third or fourth choice, and it was higher on my wife's list. And she wanted me to see this, and I really didn't want to see it, and we actually argued about it one day, and it finally was like, fine, I'll go see this if it'll just get you to quit talking about this dang movie, and I loved it.
Yeah.
It was one of those where you end up eating your words with your wife, but it was great. In fact, we went back and saw it in the theater, first run theater, a second time, and I was trying to hold out to watch it again until Nate had seen it and we could discuss it again, because I already felt biased enough about this movie that I didn't want to taint myself any further until I could see it, until Nate had seen it and we could discuss it. So we just watched it again tonight. So this is my third viewing of this film, and this was Nate's first viewing. So Nate, first impressions?
It was kind of a bit of a process. How I felt about the film evolved over the course of watching the film.
Absolutely.
I think it took a while to get going.
Yep.
And my thoughts for probably the first third or so of the film was, it's smart and it's well put together, and I appreciate it, but I don't love it.
Yep.
And it took a while to hook me. And in fact, I think I can tell you when it hooked me. It was in the scene and again, we are a spoilers cast.
Yeah.
So in the scene where Christopher Thornbee.
Yep.
So in the very general overview, this is a murder mystery. It's Agatha Christie-like, about a mystery writer who dies under mysterious circumstances. He's got a clan of family that all hangers on that are kind of have their motives that they might want him dead. And he is kind of accidentally on purpose killed. It's a little hard to explain all the details.
It takes a long time to get there.
It takes a long time to get there and find out exactly what happened and the context in which everything happened. But the scene in which Marta Cabrera, played by the Cuban-born actress Ana de Armas, and I want to say of her, this is her movie.
Yeah.
This is a movie that has a star-studded cast, and she is the center of the thing, and she holds her own.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But there's the scene where she thinks that she has killed her benefactor. She's a nurse working for this old man, the writer, played by Christopher Plummer. That is, and when Christopher Plummer's like, I know I'm about to die because you gave me the wrong medicine, but we're going to construct this in such a way that you can get away with it.
But he only does it because he knows he's altered his will.
Yeah.
And made Marta the recipient of the entirety of his estate.
Because of his disdain for the hangers-on and his oft-times kind of revolting family. But that was the moment in which I got a stake, that I finally felt like I had a stake in it. And my appreciation of it grew. Now, we have talked before about...
Well, I think before, back in December, January, when I was bugging you to see this movie, and I mean bugging you to go see this movie, I think I told you, you're not going to like the first third. Just hang on through the first third. Just bear with it, and then you're going to enjoy it. I had kind of a similar reaction. And I reacted very negatively at the very beginning of this film to Daniel Craig's character's personification, his what I can only describe as his foghorn leghorn accent.
They even used the word. Chris Evans
Yeah.
says he's doing a foghorn leghorn shtick and calls him CSI KFC.
Yep. Yeah.
So Daniel Craig plays a character named
Benoit Blanc.
Blanc is an Agatha Christie type detective that is hired by an anonymous party to sit in on the police's pro forma investigation about what they think is a suicide of Christopher Plummer.
Yeah. Which, again, spoiler heavy, it turns out to be that it was a suicide, but a manipulated suicide.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that leads to a totally unrelated murder.
All right, we're dogless now.
Yeah, I mean, the cast in this movie's great. Christopher Plummer's not in it for particularly long. They set up, what the family would have liked this suicide scene to have looked like initially, and then you start finding out a little bit more information. It just starts peeling back layer by layer. The way they unfold this story, the pacing of this movie, it's all really well executed.
I did feel like it was a little too long.
Yeah?
I don't know if I could pinpoint precisely where I'd make my trims, but it felt
You could
like
probably
it was a
cut
little
out
long.
that storyline with Fran or simplify it and make it, shorten the movie a fair amount right there. And even then, like some of the scenes with Fran, you get the feeling that they left more on the cutting room floor, that they realized that it was long and had to cut it down, and it got kind of chopped right there. But overall, I feel like it's pretty well executed. The ending is funny. I mean, this film maintains the humor throughout the movie.
It's smart, and it's got a wit to it.
Yeah.
Again, at first it felt like it was the form without the substance,
Yeah.
but you kind of eventually get into its rhythm.
Yeah.
This was directed by a man named Rian Johnson.
Uh-huh.
We know Rian Johnson from a number of things. He made a rather smart, kind of revisionist science fiction time travel film called Looper.
Okay.
With Bruce Willis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yep.
He's kind of a revisionist guy. I mean,
He also directed one of the new Star Wars.
one of the Star Wars, which I was going to mention, which was The Last Jedi, which was my favorite of the new trilogy and probably my second favorite Star Wars films overall. It was not perfect, but it took risks,
Yeah.
which J.J. Abrams basically refused to do.
Yeah.
So I came in well disposed to Rian Johnson. The experience making the Star Wars film, I think, was a mixed bag at best for him, and he wanted to return to something more indie, something that he had more full control over. That is also, again, a revisionist take on the big dark house murder mystery Clue type genre.
Well, and that's the thing. Part of the thing about this movie, like at first going into this movie, I was like, this movie doesn't know whether it wants to be Clue. It doesn't, know whether it wants to be Sherlock Holmes or what it wants to be, or some combination of all of them. So the first third of the movie, you're like, great, this is a hodgepodge that they're gonna drop the ball on, and things of that nature. The first time I saw this, I was still skeptical of the first third of the movie, and Daniel Craig, his character at first, 100% turned me off. But then you get into it past that first third, and you start to come around on Benoit Blanc. And I also thought it was interesting that Chris Evans, coming off of having played Captain America, wants to play the bad guy.
James Bond beats Captain America.
Yeah. We should talk a little bit more about the cast of this movie. We've mentioned Daniel Craig is in it, Chris Evans. Ana de Armas is Marta Cabrera, like Nate said, basically the lead of this movie. Jamie Lee Curtis plays Linda Drysdale.
And that's a throwback to our first real episode, which was about Halloween.
Yep. Michael Shannon.
Shandango.
Don Johnson, Toni Collette, who I'm a fan of from the movie The Way, Way Back. Lakeith Stanfield, Christopher Plummer, Catherine Langford.
Ricky Lindholm. Frank Oz?
Yeah.
Frank Oz, really. He was the lawyer.
That was the attorney, yeah.
M. Emmett Walsh. M. Emmett Walsh has a very brief appearance as the groundskeeper. M. Emmett Walsh has looked like he could fall over dead at any minute since at least 1975. It's like, how is this guy still alive? And I had made a comment when when our lead goes to meet the person that supposedly sent her the ransom note in the old laundromat. And when they show this person, you can't make out who it is. It's all done in shadow. Part of me briefly thought maybe it's Christopher Plummer, and this is all a big misdirect. But I mentioned to you I know who I want it to be.
Who did you want it to be?
Emmett Walsh.
Oh yeah, yeah, you did mention that. This movie takes so many twists and sets up so many different people to be the fall guy or the bad guy that you want it to be someone. By the end of this, you really don't like the family at all. In fact, they set that up with how the family treats Marta so good when they think she isn't involved, and then as soon as they read the will, they twist on Marta. I think all of that is part of the misdirect. But yeah, this film, what do you think of this film overall? Come on, tell me some more of your first reactions to this film.
Again, as I said, it grew on me. I did like it. Now, we have spoken before about big grin movies. I think maybe this is where I was going with something earlier. I almost need to create another term for this, which is like the mid-grin movie, or sporadically a big grin movie. There were moments in it that I thoroughly enjoyed, kind of the subversion of expectations, which I think this film does a very good job of.
I think I told you that I thought this might be borderline big grin movie. I didn't think it was going to be a full-fledged big grin movie, but I thought it was going to be a borderline big grin movie for you. Some of the other notes I took as we watched this movie, there are some great conversations in this movie. There's that one conversation kind of in the middle of the movie before the will reading when the family's sitting around the house after the funeral and the siblings are having that current events conversation.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
What the politics of this movie, because its form is classic and timeless, but it also has these very contemporary references.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a political element to the movie because our lead is not an illegal immigrant herself, but her mother is an undocumented immigrant. And
it has all of the buzzwords.
This specter of, is my mom going to get found out, is throughout the movie. And then you've got the elements of Michael Shannon's son, who was one of the kids in the It movie.
Yeah, who they refer to as an alt-right
troll.
Yeah.
And they say some pretty derogatory things about him, but he seems like a creepy little kid.
Yeah.
And the political discussion they have with Don Johnson.
In the context of pre-COVID.
Yeah.
With some of the immigration things that were going on here in the U.S., it was very timely.
Yeah.
To when
and that was kind of fun. Yeah. I wonder if that turned off some people, though. I'm sure some people it did, but probably not a
honestly, I think it was so subtle that most people probably didn't catch it. I thought it was pretty well executed.
Which leads me to probably my big question about this film. Is it a metaphor? And if so, what is it a metaphor about?
I don't know. I never thought of it in that perspective. Do you have something specific?
No, it's just it's a thought that's in the beginning of its formation in my head. But I thought there's all the political elements and the structure and who ends up being the bad guys versus who's the good guys. He is, I think, trying to say something political. But having just finished the film 20 minutes ago, I'm not entirely sure what that is yet.
Well, and having seen this multiple times over a period of 7 months, that hasn't stuck out to me. Mm. So I'm not sure that I could say anything about to that effect. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I was going to briefly mention the names of some of
the novels that Mr. Thornbee has written.
Yeah, so they make a couple references to him. Now, the two cops, you've got the lead detective, and then you've got a highway patrol. This is Massachusetts.
Lieutenant Elliot, played by Lakeith Stanfield, and then the other one, the trooper, is Trooper Wagner, played by Noah Sagan. Which, real quick, tangent, they at one point have a conversation on the phone with the detective Hardrock. Did you catch who that was?
No.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
The
Lieutenant Elliot.
The community that they're in is small to mid-size, semi-rural area. And the highway state patrolman that's there is a big fan of this guy's books and a big fan of mysteries. And he's got some good little comic relief moments where he's just enthralled to be in this classic murder scenario with a writer he loves. And when Daniel Craig is trying to give his summation speech at the end, and the lieutenant's like, I'm going to kind of move on with it. He's like, shh, no, don't interrupt this. It's too good.
But you were going to mention the titles of some of the books.
Oh, the titles. So the name of their publishing company is Blood Like Wine. Uh-huh. And I only caught and was able to write down 2. And, I took far fewer notes in this movie than I almost always take.
And I took a little bit more than I usually take.
I was just in with it. But I think my favorite title is the Menagerie
Tragedy.
Tragedy trilogy.
Yeah.
And A Killer for All Seasons was one of them.
Yeah.
And there's little elements of his house, like the statuary or a kind of a secret door that were
Or the
used
almost
in
Game
some
of
of his
Thrones
books.
backdrop by the one chair.
Yeah. Which has a good setup to that
Yeah.
kind of final misdirect.
Yeah. Well, but it's also a reference to one of his novels. I forget what the title of the novel was.
And I'm
but
sure...
that chair is also... I mean, most of the things around his property and his house are things from his novels.
And this is such a well put together film that I'm sure that it does bear repeat watching and that you pick up more of the little details.
Yeah. I look forward to watching
time.
this now multiple times because now there's nothing for me to spoil for when I wanted to watch it with you again. I also... One of the other comments I wanted to make is, you remember after they finished the will reading... There was a great score of the music right after they finished the will reading when they're out in the yard, with all the weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth. That music was great.
Who did the music for this?
Nathan Johnson?
Who is possibly a relative of the director? Oh, Nathan Johnson also did the musical score to Brick, which is a fun film which I would recommend you see, which also Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and I think probably was another...
Probably
Ryan Johnson film.
Because he also did the score for Looper.
Which is also kind of a revisionist film noir set in a high school.
Yeah.
I would recommend it.
But yeah, did you notice that when it...
I didn't really notice too much about this score.
Yeah. I only noticed it this time, but yeah,
I noticed
that little
some of
the music was great.
Some of the what's the word I'm looking for, where they use real music in the background.
Yeah.
So some of that is recognizable stuff.
Yeah. There was also...
Source music is the word that I was looking
for. Oh, there was also a couple great lines. Probably the most noteworthy or the funniest line that I noted was between Benoit Blanc and Marta. And Marta turns to Benoit Blanc and says, "You make a lousy detective." And Benoit Blanc turns back to her and says, "You make a lousy murderer." And then he says, "Maybe we deserve each other."
So one of the funny little complications in this film is that Marta has... She can't stand lying.
Yeah.
And in fact, it makes her nauseous to even think about lying, and she will literally
vomit,
throw up.
Yeah.
There's a joke early on, I thought that was a metaphor, but no, it makes her sick. So she has to, when she thinks that she killed him by mistake, she's very briefly coached in just tell the partial truth. And so everything she says is true. And it's phrased in such a way as to invite you to draw the connection between these things, but she doesn't go out and say that the connection is like, well, what drug did you give him? Well, since his accident, I've been giving him such and such dosage of such and such medicine.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a neat, complicating thing. I've never seen.
Well, and it was used repeatedly to good effect throughout the movie.
Even in the end, it gets.
That's a great
joke.
End of that, and she tells the lie. She gets the phone call from the hospital, and she says that Fran has woken up and is ready to talk to the detectives.
So Fran was a member of the household staff,
housemaid,
who basically figured out what was happening.
Well, saw Hugh Ranson Thornbee going back and tampering with the medical bag, and so she's the one that figures out that he's done something with the medications. He misses the funeral and goes to the house because that's the only time that the house is left unattended, or so he thinks. And so she starts trying to blackmail Hugh to get money out of this scenario. And so Hugh arranges for her death, and now they're trying to...
And tries to pin it on Marta.
Yeah, and so now they're trying to unravel this thing on Hugh. And so the detectives are confronting him, and Marta lies and says that Fran has survived and has woken up, when really the doctor told her that Fran has died, which that had to have been awkward on the doctor's end of the conversation, because she says, "That's great news, doctor." Did you notice that?
Yeah.
So it must have been awkward on the doctor's side of that, but Ranson then proceeds to confess to the whole thing, and there's some great stuff that happens in this closing sequence, because he's confessing and he starts giving this line about how the home is the family home. Benoit Blanc interrupts him.
He bought it from a Pakistani real estate in the 80s.
Yeah, and Ranson tells him to shut up. And then it's shortly after he finishes the confession and says that he did it, Marta pukes directly in his face. And then he uses a line that's been used earlier in the movie, and for a penny and for a pound, grabs a knife off of the Game of Thrones-like chair, and takes Marty to the ground, attempting to stab her, and it ends up being a fake knife from one of the novels.
And they'd actually made a reference earlier in the film that he could not tell the difference between
A real knife and
a fake knife.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good little setups. A lot of things are introduced earlier on and pay off later on.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very well structured script.
Well, and that scene happens, and then Nate, before the scene even changed, goes, and now the epilogue. And then there is a genuine epilogue. I mean, the structure of this film is very traditional. There is a very genuine epilogue. Did you enjoy the epilogue?
I enjoyed the epilogue.
I thought that
It had another good little topper at the end.
Oh, yeah.
The My House, My Rules, My Coffee.
Yep. That was
cup,
great.
Cup, which is the same cup that Christopher Plummer
was using,
and then at the end she has it and she's looking down from the balcony on the assembled family who are now dehomed because she got everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This film is good. It's not a perfect film, but it is a easily enjoyable film. Nate, how would you rate this film after first viewing?
I would give it 3.5 stars.
Uh-huh.
And I would probably give it an 8.
That's exactly where I am. Between 3 and 3.5 stars on the 4-star scale and 8 stars on the 10-star scale. Do you know anything about how this movie did?
It did very well. I know that it was made for a budget of around $40 million, and I imagine most of that was the cast.
Well, yeah, I mean, with names like...
And these people were working for, not scale, but they were probably not demanding their full usual pictures.
I mean, with names like Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, Jamie Lee Curtis, Dan Johnson, Christopher Plummer, a lot of that $40 million had to go to the cast. But yeah, you were right. Budget of $40 million. Do you know how it did on opening weekend?
No.
$26.7 million. So it made back the majority of its budget on opening weekend.
And it had staying power, as I learned.
Domestic, $165 million. This film just continued to rake it in.
Yeah.
Worldwide gross, any guesses?
$300-something million.
Yep, approaching 310. It was $309 million worldwide gross.
Wow.
Now, I heard from week one, the week that this movie was released, I heard that they were already working on a sequel. And I've noticed on Ryan Johnson, or however you pronounce that, on his IMDb list, it already lists Knives Out 2. So it's in production. There's things going on about it. I have heard that they want to make this into a series. They want Benoit Blanc to come back. And apparently Daniel Craig is willing to reprise the role of Benoit Blanc. Mm-hmm. What do you think of potential for sequels in this?
My first thought was this seems like a movie where we'll talk about the sequel, but the sequel will never happen.
Yeah.
But I think from circumstances, I think it probably will, because it did so well on such a minimal budget, and
small cast, small set.
Where the film industry to begin with was all about safe bets.
Yeah.
And after COVID-19, they're going to be even more about safe bets. And so if they have something that's done well before, they can have a reasonable expectation that it's not going to cost too much to make, and that they'll make well more.
Well, and you don't have, besides Daniel Craig, you don't have to bring back anyone else from this film.
Nobody else. Yeah.
And so you could do the same thing. You could go out and get some other names coming and working on a small budget, on a small set film that doesn't take a huge time commitment from them.
Because he's basically Perot.
Yeah.
This is an Agatha Christie story.
Yeah. But it's well executed. Like I said, the first third of the movie, you're trying to figure out what the heck this is, and I'm not even sure that this film knew what it was the first third of the movie. Mm. But it really comes together in the end. I would be intrigued to see a sequel to this, but I don't know if they can continue it.
Mm. Yeah, it'd be hard to capture that lightning in a bottle a second time.
Yeah.
But I'd definitely be interested to see what they come up with, especially under the same director.
Well, I mean, Benoit Blanc, the nature of this, the way they structured it, you can pick Benoit Blanc up and move him around anywhere
in the world.
And drop him in, like you would a Hercule Poirot, and just drop him in somewhere and into a situation. So there's potential for this to be a strong series, similar to like a Hercule Poirot, or something like that, or Sherlock Holmes, any of those types of things. Which is why it was kind of low on my priority list, because it didn't seem like it knew what it wanted to be. It didn't seem like it was anything definitive. I thought it was going to be more like Clue going into it, but it was well executed. So,
yeah.
Any other closing thoughts on
No,
this?
I thought it was satisfying. I'm still kind of processing it.
Are you glad you finally saw it?
I'm glad I finally saw it. I think it will bear a repeat viewing at
well,
some
it's
point.
on Amazon Prime, so it's easy to repeat
Easy access, yeah.
So if you guys haven't seen this, it's on Amazon Prime. Go and watch this film. Enjoy it. You're going to have some laughs. It's going to take twists and turns that you don't see coming, even necessarily after having seen this film. You'll know the gist of it after having listened to this podcast, but it's still going to take twists and turns that we haven't covered, and I still think you'd enjoy it even after listening to this.
Because as Michael Shannon says, that's certainly not what I was expecting.
Yeah. Well, I'm Rob.
And I'm Nate.
And this is Rob and Nate. That was Record a Podcast signing off. But not really signing off, because now we're going to taste a drink.
Oh, yes. And we're back with our periodic post-show beverage tasting. Not so much sponsored by the Root Beer Store as discouraged by them, because we continue to insist on trying weird novelty flavors.
Tonight's flavor is chocolate bacon, or bacon and chocolate.
Bacon soda with chocolate.
Yeah.
You all get your fixins. Lester's fixins. That was almost entirely foam.
Yeah.
There's the tiniest amount of liquid that actually came out of that.
Now, for context, all of these beverages have been purchased at a local store called the Root Beer Store in Sandy, Utah. I told the owners of the store that we had done some samplings on our podcast, and he asked me what flavors we told him, and I told him that we started with Moxie, and he visibly reacted. And then I told him that our second soda was grass, and he audibly reacted and told me no more because we needed to taste test some of the good flavors.
Which we will do in the future, but for now we're going to try this. And first, a toast to Danica McKellar.
What I was going to ask, what do you think of the smell? Whoa, that smells really odd.
It's kind of strong, vaguely industrial.
It smells like a beer.
I chugged it a bit because I anticipated a bad aftertaste. It's okay going down, and then
it's not good going down.
After it settles a little bit, you get to realize that yes, you can taste the chocolate.
I'm not tasting the bacon.
I'm not tasting the bacon either.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's chocolate and there's something else. Whether that something else is bacon.
Maybe really, really burnt bacon.
It's like chocolate and like grease is what it tastes like.
It doesn't smell like bacon or chocolate. It doesn't really taste smooth. It doesn't really go down smooth. And it definitely doesn't have a smooth aftertaste.
I will not be having this again.
No. I think that is by far the worst we've tasted. I would rather drink Moxie any day of the week.
I would rather drink grass than this. Grass surprised me in how non-gross it was. This is kind of gross.
Yeah, this is not good.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll even finish this.
I'll finish it, but I'm struggling to finish it.
Mm.
And I'm only finishing it out of principle that these cost enough that I'm going to finish it out of principle. That really smells like a beer.
Mm.
Not necessarily a great beer, but it smells like a beer.
Mm.
Not like a soda pop. So we might have to wash this down with a regular root beer.
Yeah.
What do you make? Bacon chocolate.
Yeah, I don't taste the bacon.
No.
I simply don't.
No.
I taste the chocolate. I taste a greasy, burny thing.
Yeah, this isn't good.
No. But we did not expect it to be to begin with.
Well, we certainly didn't expect it to be great. But I didn't expect it to be this bad.
So it's a good contrast with the movie.
I mean, generally things that say they have bacon in them, it could be better, but it's not bad.
Mm.
This one...
There's not enough bacon in it, which is you wouldn't think you'd be saying after drinking
How
a
would
soda.
you put a bacon flavor in the soda anyway? Are you just putting bacon grease in it, like you said?
We are going to, at some point, and I think we probably need to do a good root beer or two, the next time or two we record. But I want to try
That's awful.
the buffalo wing,
Oh yeah.
which I imagine will taste very strong.
Yeah.
I don't imagine it'll taste good, but I'm curious, and I think it'll taste better than that.
Here's what I think we ought to do next.
Mm.
I think we both ought to pick a root beer that we've really enjoyed, and we taste each other's root beer.
All right.
Yeah. Like we give each other the bottle,
That seems doable.
and then we'll both have a bottle of soda. But we'll have to pour it into a glass just for the sound effect.
No, we like the sound of it.
Yeah.
It's very satisfying.
Yep.
Satisfying audio.
Well, I think that's us signing off. So
This is less satisfying audio because we're rambling.
yeah, about bad soda. Okay. Yes.
All right,
we are.
where were we? He had offered to rewind it, and I'm like, no, I don't need to rewind it.
Yeah.
But where were we? To be
We were talking about the cast and
the cast, yeah. So,
Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc is
yeah, so he's great, and where were we with
his
this?
accent, and do I actually need to back it up?
No. I think I can think it out. I can talk myself through this thing.
Yeah.
We were talking about how
Benoit Blanc's effect, his
the CSI KFC.
KFC.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to back it up, aren't I?
I don't know. We can leave it as a loose